Good afternoon, and welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Arts and Culture Commission. It is July 18th, and I do want to just give a quick welcome to our newest Commissioner Shirikian, for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.
Roll call, please.
Commissioners Derhovanesian?
Yes.
Kevanian?
Yes.
Lee?
Are here.
Shirikian?
Yes. Here.
Chairperson Deaver?
Here.
The agenda for the July 18th meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall on July 12, 2013. Item 2, consent items. At 2A, approval of meeting minutes from June 20th, 2013.
I will move the approval of minutes.
And I'll second it.
Commissioners Derhovanesian?
Yes.
Kevanian?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
Shirikian?
Yes. Abstain, yes. I read it, but...
Chairperson Deaver?
Yes. Next item.
Item 3, introductions and presentations. At 3A, Library Arts and Culture events presented by Chuck Wyke, Community Relations Manager.
Good afternoon, Chairperson. Brief report about what's going on at the library.
Well,
A little bit
okay.
Commissioner. That's a picture of Brand Library. You may, well, nobody recognizes this ceiling. You would have recognized it maybe in 1904 when it was put in. It's been covered by paint and all kinds of things. It took professionals a lot of work. They painted it with water. They brought out the colors. They brought out just amazing pictures, stencils that are being reproduced. But this is what they had to work with. Pieces, literally pieces of ceiling that had crumbled. You can see them on a scaffolding. They're beginning the work at this point. That's closer to being finished. Again, another spot in the building. Just amazing what the work that's been done up there to historically reproduce what was there 100+ years ago. So we're really looking forward to the reopening of Brand Library next year. There's going to be a lot of great programs planned. Just wanted to let you see those pictures just one more time to give you an idea. Here, you may have heard about our Central Library renovation. The person on the right is Gruen Architects Deborah Gerard. She's the lead architect on the project. On the left, we had a visit from Marvin Taff, T-A-F-F. He was the original architect of the 1973 building. So our staff talked to him, and Deborah talked to him about the new plans, and he's really all for that. Upcoming events, Geraldine Saunders, Glendale resident. She was the woman who wrote a book about the Love Boat. That boat sort of helped turn around the industry of vacationing. And she's going to be at the library. There's a new biography about her by another Glendale resident, Sheila Murray. That's at the end of August. The Dryden family reunion. Nathaniel Dryden was the architect at Brand Library. Okay, he was Leslie Brand's brother-in-law, I believe. He also built the Robinson Mansion and the estates in Beverly Hills. It was the first major luxury estate in Beverly Hills. His descendants travel around the country visiting places, and they got together, came down, visited Beverly Hills, and went up to Brand Library for a tour. So Cindy was along with that tour. She may have taken that photo. But we hope to invite them back down when the building reopens. But that's the Dryden family right there. The associates of Brand Library are very busy. Even though Brand Library is closed, they took a tour of Los Angeles area murals with the Mural Conservancy of Los Angeles. That's one of their deals. Now, they have an upcoming event. They have a film series, their Real Art film series. They're going to celebrate Ray Bradbury's birthday. He was born on August 22nd. So they're going to show the film Fahrenheit 451. Interesting about burning books. It's going to be shown in a library. But they're also bringing an author, Stephen Leiva. And Stephen, one of his, a good friend of Ray Bradbury, and one of his goals was to name a big street after Ray. And about 10 years ago, the corner of Flower and 5th is named Ray Bradbury Way because of Stephen. So he has a book of some of his remembrances of Ray. I think that's going to be a great event. It's going to go late into the night, but it's going to be a good event. Before I give you the website and the Facebook and the Twitter account, one other thing that's coming up, we're going to have a mobile technology class. It's going to be taught on a couple of Saturdays in September. So if you have an iPad or a Kindle, you can come down and we'll show you how to use our library app. We'll show you how to get books on there. We'll show you how to get the Mango languages on your Kindle or your iPad or your iPhone, where you can learn a language right there while you're traveling, basically. So those are just some upcoming things at the library. I come every month. If you have questions, please let Cindy know. We can keep you up to date on all kinds of things, but that's kind of a short overview.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Next item.
Item 4, oral communications. Discussion is limited to items not on this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. The Commission may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. The Commission may refer the matter to City staff for investigation and report.
And I don't have any cards with me. Are there cards? Looks like there might be a card to be turned in. Oh. Is that agenda? So we have no open oral communications. So next item, please.
Item 5, business agenda. At 5A, 1, a recommendation for City Council whether to accept art donation of Cowboy on the Hill.
Thank you. I'm really excited to present this opportunity to accept an art donation of Cowboy on the Hill by the artist who goes by the name Justin. If you recall, sometime last year, a life-size plywood cutout of Clint Eastwood in a pose from the movie A Fistful of Dollars was installed in the hills of Glendale. Soon after, similar ones were put up of John Wayne and Gene Autry in the nearby hills. Essentially, the cutouts greet hikers on Glendale's hiking trails, as well as they're visible from the freeway, and they're designed to be silhouetted against the sky. So if you've seen them as you drive down the freeway, it's really pretty, actually. You don't know if it's a real-life person or a cowboy. And they were originally put up by the artist to evoke a sense of freedom for commuters on the freeway. The artist doesn't like to make public presentations, so he asked that I present on his behalf, as well as Reg Green, who will tell you a little bit about the Clint Eastwood cutout, the original piece, as well as the additions that were made by Justin, the artist. So I want to invite Reg Green just to come up for a couple of minutes just to tell you a little bit about the piece, and I will put up an image of the piece. Just want to let you know that unfortunately the piece was removed months ago. Somebody decided to remove the piece, but the artist has said he would like to reproduce a new one and make a donation to the city to formalize the process.
Madam Chairman and members of the Commission, thank you for having me here today. This project has moved a lot faster than I could ever have expected under the leadership of Annette here with a group of us who've been working on it. I never thought that we'd be at this stage this fast. I got into this I hike every day, and one day I walked up the trail from Cherry Canyon, and there the silhouette of Clint, which was very dramatic, was not there. And a man was on his knees next to it where little pieces had been broken off. Somebody had smashed it. It turned out this was Justin. And I told him how sorry I was that this should have taken place, and shared my story with him. I told him that I loved public art because in this particular case, for example, it brought people into the countryside who had no particular interest in the country, and it took people into art who had no particular interest in art either. But my special connection with this was that my son, my 7-year-old son, was shot during a carjacking while we were in Italy. And this was caused a considerable amount of interest, particularly there. And we said we wanted to put up a monument, not just to Nicholas, but to all children. We had donated his organs by this time, and to seven Italians, 4 of them teenagers. And the foundry that makes the bells for the papacy asked Pope John Paul II if they could make a bell for us and have it on this monument. We, of course, were very honored to do this. Neither Maggie nor I are Catholic, but this was one of those things that reached across everything. The monument is up now. When Italy heard of these things, they began to send bells in. There were ship's bells, school bells, cow bells, and now there are 140 of them from all over the world, many of them with a story attached to them, a child who died or a mother who was saved by a transplant. And so I told Justin about this. The next time I went up on that trail, there was the picture of Clint, but different this time. Instead of his hands down by his gun, his arm was hanging out, and on this was a little bell, a small plaque on the back, which told the story and said that if you want to donate your organs, give the bell a ring. It touched me very deeply, and I, of course, the transformation of what had been a rather threatening figure into something so generous. So I buddied up with Justin from then on, and we worked hard to try to find a place to put this. And I think we have a place. If it's the one that is going to be chosen, it will be visible by Route 2 from anybody coming up or down. And I think will be a rather welcoming homecoming for commuters seeing this familiar figure, and particularly when they know that he's not going to clean up Glendale, but he's going to help you with your health. Thank you so much.
And I just want to ask GTV6 just to project this screen so the community who's watching from home can see the Clint Eastwood cutout. This is before it was removed and went missing, and Justin has said that he will be reproducing this piece with the bell. And he has been working with Mark Sturdivant from the Parks Department, who is here, and I want to personally thank him for working hard with Justin to find an appropriate location that could be visible to hikers, it could be visible from the freeway, to respect the original intent of the artwork, but that it would also be hopefully preserved and protected from future vandalism. Mark, if you have a couple of things to add, please feel free to come up. If not, I recommend that the Commission approve this donation. Come on up.
Thank you, Chairman Deaver, members of the Commission, members of staff. I'm Mark Sturdivant from Community Services and Parks. I just want to say it's been a real pleasure for us to work with Justin and to work with Reg to find a location for this piece. We have found a location that we think is very suitable. It's above the sports complex. It's not on a specific trail, but it's in a good location where it can be seen from the sports complex and it can be seen from the 2 freeway, whether you're going northbound or southbound. and accessible if someone is really inclined to get up and ring the bell, but not so accessible that I think it will be easily vandalized. So I just want to say that it's been a pleasure to work with Annette, Justin, and Reg because this story is so compelling, and so is Clint Eastwood. Thanks.
So, Commissioner, comments or questions with regard to this item? Entertain them, please.
I will make the motion to accept the donation. And actually, this is just another story about how arts and people's lives on a day-to-day basis can change. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Chair, DeVere and Commissioners. It would be actually a motion to recommend to the City Council to accept.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you for...
Second the motion.
Roll call.
Commissioners Derhovannesian.
Yes.
Kavanian.
Yes.
Lee.
Yes.
Sharikian.
Abstain.
Chairperson Deaver.
Yes.
At 5A2, approval of programs and projects for 2013 through 2015 work plan.
Thank you. Over the last 8 months, the Commission has been working really hard, planning and strategizing for the future of arts and culture here in the city for the next 5 years. In March, you approved the Arts and Cultural Plan, which is essentially a 5-year strategic plan for the arts. You identified 6 goals that really should be the guiding principles for arts and cultural programming in the city. You also approved a work plan that could help further guide some of the projects you wanted to do. And today it's refining that work plan a little bit more so that we can begin implementation. The fiscal year started July 1st, so it's really important that we approve a work plan so we can begin implementing some of the robust programming that you have in mind. Just to remind you of some of the priorities you identified using the Urban Art Fund, they include 2 different types of mural projects, signature annual art event, temporary rotating public art programs, cultural and performing arts, as well as doing a feasibility study for capital improvements for an art facility and an art and vacant storefronts program. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be going through and just kind of giving you the big picture on each of these areas, the budget, so that we can, you can approve this work plan so that it can be presented to the council for their approval. In the coming months, I will come back and I will define that scope of work and really think about the implementation strategy. So again, today's just the big picture so that you can direct me to proceed to develop that scope of work for you. If you recall, a couple of months ago, I presented on 2 different mural projects, which you approved. I just wanted to refresh your memory and just remind the community what you'd like to work on. First is murals on utility boxes. The Commission expressed an interest in doing neighborhood-specific themes and partnering with artists as well as the community, youth, and with the Great American Cleanup. And this would be promoted through a call for artists so we can get different proposals from artists in the community. And we have designated a budget of $30,000. And below, some of the images depict similar programs in other cities. The second one that the Commission approved was murals on city property. Again, these were like the large-scale murals that the Commission wanted to see. We still need to identify some appropriate spaces for it. The Commission asked that I look into buildings, parking garages, bridge underpasses, or city entryways. And with that, once we identify all the proper locations, we can issue a call for artists. And the budget for that is $45,000. Another item the Commission expressed interest in is to have an annual arts and culture event, but something that's a signature and large scale, similar to events that happen in Pasadena, Santa Monica, and Culver City. Essentially, the goal would be to increase exposure and opportunities for artists, but also provide a cultural draw for visitors to come to the city and know that Glendale is the epicenter of arts and culture, and we have a lot of opportunities. We would issue an RFP for an event management company that has experience working on art events so that they could curate shows for us and put together an event. And the budget for this is $60,000. Should the commission want to continue with Open Studio Tour, you have the opportunity to reduce this from $60,000 to $50,000 to give yourself a little bit more of a budget for Open Studio Tour if you want to do that. But we still need to identify who will operate Open Studio Tour. We don't have the capacity, so if the commission wants, you can designate between $5,000 or $10,000, but that would have to go to an RFP to see if there are any interested organizations willing to take that on. Second is temporary or rotating exhibitions. The commission identified programs that they had seen in West Hollywood and Pasadena. This would essentially be about creating new venues for artwork in public spaces, and it would enhance city-owned properties. So properties that are just sitting there, they may not be vacant, but they're just not very vibrant. The artwork would really create some vibrancy on the street level. These installations would be temporary or rotating so that there's continued interest in the program. And this would also be managed and curated by an organization or a curator, and we would issue an RFP for this, and there is a budget of $60,000. The other is cultural and performing art programming. The commission identified or stated that you wanted to offer micro grants for local artists and community groups to be able to do some sort of cultural and performing arts. Recommendation is to be able to fund a series of performances that would take place during the opening year of Brand Library and Art Center. These could happen over the summer and over the fall. You would identify a certain number of opportunities available, open it up for an RFP, and we would fund it through the Cultural Data Project, which is that streamlined grant program that we have. And we could have a really robust program with a budget of $20,000. It's very similar to what some of these other communities offer in their hometowns. Something else that's very important to the commission is to conduct a feasibility study to see if we could do capital improvements for the purposes of an art facility. One of the locations the commission identified is a lower level of the Civic Auditorium. We really need to see if we can enhance the existing space. Of course, anything is possible, but we have to make sure that there's enough budget for it, and we have to also coordinate with community services and parks and just understand the financial impacts for when we need to close the facility to make the enhancements, how much the enhancements would cost, and if it's really feasible for us to make those enhancements.
I have a clarification, and I have a $40,000 in this chart in our.
Well, the chart, I double-checked the accounting off of the chart, so this was a mistake on my part. So I apologize. So for the record, it would be a budget of $40,000, not $30,000. And the last program, last month, Praxis came to provide an update and to answer some questions about the Glendale Area Temporary Exhibitions Program, which was a city-sponsored art and vacant storefronts program, which put in visual window installations and had some open gallery days. The commission has the option to continue the contract with Praxis or issue a new RFP for a new consultant. And the budget is $60,000. When the commission approved the when you approved the work plan, you had identified $120,000 for temporary installation. So I've just split that budget in half between this and the rotating exhibition. A couple of commissioners had questions, what does it mean if we continue with Praxis? What does it mean if we issue an RFP? So I wanted to just let you know what you get with either decision so you can make a better informed decision. Continuing with Praxis would help maintain the GATE brand since it is a moniker that they were able to establish. And of course, you would get a quicker implementation since they've worked with the city and have already met the insurance requirements and had an ongoing contract with the city. Of course, so it doesn't mean that there would be no delay in the city process. It would just mean updating their scope of work and the contract, and they could proceed. And there would also be no delay in outreaching to property owners, since they already have that established contact. Then they would just reach out and say the program is continuing. The commission also has the opportunity to define the scope of work. So you can, if you continue with praxis, you can say, you want the program to, if you want it to look a little bit different, if you want it expanded citywide, if you want to them to partner with specific arts organizations, you can encourage all of that through a scope of work. You also have a lot of flexibility if you issue a new RFP. You can you can widen that scope, and you can include some newer responsibilities in that scope. And you also have the option to select a new consultant when you open it up for an RFP. However, there's a delay in the implementation. With that, when we issue RFPs, the RFP would need to come to you for approval, and then it would have to be open for at least 1 month, and then we would have to go through the selection process. And the new consultant would then have to go through the city process of meeting our insurance requirements and the contract, and then they would begin outreaching to property owners. And so just to sum up what the direction items are today, I recommend approval on the first, which is approving these programs and services. They're essentially the programs and projects that you would identify that you said that was really important, and I've been able to just streamline it a little bit more so that we can approve it today, so I can begin defining the scope of work for each one. The second is I need direction on what you want to do with the Art and Vacant Storefronts program, or GATE, if you want to refine the scope of work and continue the contract with Praxis, or issue a new RFP for an Art and Vacant Storefronts program. Before we proceed, I just want to let you know what the next steps are, and then I'll come back to getting some of your comments, and I can answer questions. The next steps after today, once you approve the recommended programs and projects, I will present this to the council for their review and approval in September. This will include the policies you identified, the general fund programs and budget, as well as the Urban Art Fund programs and budget. So we're going to give the council just the entire package of everything you're going to be working on for the next 2 years. And once they approve that, then we could really begin issuing the RFP. So that's why it's really important that we stay on schedule. For the commission, the next steps include developing that implementation schedule for all of this work that you're going to be doing, so that you're not burdened with doing too much over the 2-year process. I will take a look to see what's going to make sense, and to give you a snapshot of what the 2 years are going to look like, so that the community understands when certain policy discussions will take place, when certain programs or projects are going to happen, when the request for proposals will be issued. And then we'll also be defining the scope of work for each program or project. So so far you've identified you want murals on utility boxes. The next step is to identify how many utility boxes are there, where do we want to focus on, and really give the specifics. That'll come later. And then the most exciting part is the implementation, which is what everyone's waiting for. Once we go through all that and issue the RFP and make selections, we can begin implementing. Something that is really exciting for the commission is in response to all of these priorities that you've put out, there's been a lot of interest from community groups and artists to do specific programs. Some muralists have approached and said, we heard that you were discussing a mural program, we want to participate. And I've been taking down everyone's information, and I've let them know they will be notified once we issue a call for artists and once we begin narrowing down that scope of work. So they're very excited about the opportunity. It's very consistent with what some of the other communities do. They prepare this database of interested parties, and when the RFP is finalized and issued, then everyone can submit a formal proposal. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'm going to leave these direction items up for you.
And before we open up to Commissioner questions and comments, I have just a couple clarifications I wanted to check on. You had mentioned the potential in the signature art event, being able to break that out into, if we wanted to do a studio open tour or such. Did you need that kind of direction now, or would that be something we'd be taking care of when we're dealing with that particular program?
That you can branch out when we start talking about the signature art event. I just wanted to let you know we don't need a separate line item for it at this point. So again, today's the bigger picture.
And that's kind of what I was trying to clarify a little bit. And then the other question I had, going back to the PowerPoint as well, under the capital improvements, it was about a feasibility study for space, which I think is appropriately generic, but I just wanted to check because, again, our chart listed specifically as city facilities. So I just want to make sure that we are all in discussion about the same piece. Are we talking about the program being the study of where can we have space, or are we talking specifically about capital improvements to city facilities?
Well, the commission had asked specifically for city facilities. If you want to discuss it further, then we can remove that line item and have that discussion at a later point. You can generalize that line item. Again, we don't want to get into specifics. Is it going to be city facility? Is it any facility in Glendale? Again, it's, if you want to have that discussion, you can make it a little bit more general, and then when we come back to discuss it later, we can do that if further discussion is required.
Thank you. So I do want to open up to Commissioner comments, focusing specifically on the overall program as that first suggested recommendations. Okay. Commissioner De Havanasian.
Yes, I have a question. When we have all these different projects that you discussed, there needs to be a curator, from what I understand, for most of them, or some of them. The money allocated, the dollar amounts, is there any decision or finalized situation of how much of it goes to the curator and how much goes to the artist, or is there any of such thing that the artist would get a part of it, or that part is not very clear to me?
That's something we can discuss when we begin discussing the individual programs. For example, when I bring forward the scope of work for murals on city utility boxes, we can begin to zero in on that. Some programs offer an honorarium for artists, whereas other ones, it's just about getting the curator or the consultant to oversee the program, and in that situation, you're of course paying more for the curator to do all of the work in terms of the management of the program and the curation and some of the other logistics. So we will begin talking about that when we look at each different program or project.
Just I wanted to make sure that we do allocate kind of, after discussion and after we study each project individually, to see how much needs to be allocated, because that would show us how much money is going to be left if we are going to help the community and the artists with the work that they are going to produce. Because ahead of time, if you want to hire any curators, well, they come with different price range, so that is major important to know where we stand on that. Okay? Thank you.
Other questions or comments?
I have a few.
Commissioner Kivanian.
Actually, what I would like to suggest is that we actually remove the capital improvements to city facilities for arts completely from this budget, because we don't even know what venue we're specifically talking about. Apparently, at this point, I thought, in terms of, in my mind, it was fairly clear we were talking about the lower level of the Civic, but that's the fact that we're not even completely, all of us are sure, that scares me a little bit. And of course, the first thing that comes to my mind is I would want to see a feasibility report, because if we invest $40,000 in the lower section of the Civic, that's only going to get us track lighting, and if we don't have any events to go in there, then, and if it's 10 to 12, then I'll think about it. But I mean, if it's just, we don't have any at this point that are guaranteed. So I would like to see that item completely taken out from the project's scope. My other question is, now that I'm actually seeing this completely in its most final state, and I'm thinking about the actual process of approving these policies, I'm basically, if we count that, let's say, for example, we discussed 2 items specifically per meeting, that's basically going to take us 1 year just to even get all of this stuff ready to go. So why do we need a 2-year budget for items that are already going to take us about a year to get into place, is my question.
Well, I think in August and in September, I can bring back more refined scope of work. What the most important thing is getting this moving, and that's why the schedule is going to be really important. We discussed the murals. The mural is something, next month I could actually bring forward a scope of work that you can approve pending the council's approval of the work plan, and that could be a program that you begin implementing this fall while you're working on some other programs. So that's why the scheduling is really important. We're not going to be able to do everything at once, even though everybody wants to be. We have to stagger it out. So I have been thinking about that, and so next year we will have a very robust year, probably starting late spring and beyond. But I've noted that. And
wonderful.
I do want some.
What I wanted to hear.
I do want some clarification. Do you want to completely remove the capital improvements from the work plan? Well, you did say that you want to remove it. Do you want it itemized to discuss at a later meeting,
Right.
or do you want to fund a feasibility study for any facility? I just want.
What I would like to see first and foremost is a feasibility study on the lower section of the Civic Auditorium, simply because. For example, we may decide that even if it's $500,000 worth of renovation that needs to go into the location, that we can fund that still because we do have the funds. So to say $40,000 is kind of like taking a shot in the dark. We don't know what the issues are with that building. We don't know anything about it. Maybe we can't even change the lighting, put in track lighting. We don't even know that. We don't know how old the wiring is. We have no idea. So instead of just throwing out $40,000 for something we don't even know anything about, I would like to see that removed, and so that we have a feasibility report. Actually, I would love to see that ASAP. I mean, if it's in August, if you can do that by then, that would be terrific. If not, by September.
Question?
Commissioner de Hovhannissian.
Does this mean that you want experts or electricians and et cetera in the field to go and observe the place and check out and give us a kind of an update of how much the cost would be? In that case, yes, I do think that with 40,000, basically, and even if the wiring is not, to rewire the thing and then to be able, I think it is doable, but there are other issues and concerns that individually, when we had a conversation with Ms. Vartanian, we had discussed that. So, yeah, we need to have an expert to give us an update of exact pricing, so then accordingly we'll decide if it is something we want to go with it or not.
On that, let's talk about this piece and get this kind of figured out. If you're talking about feasibility, then you're talking about beyond just what capital. I mean, you're talking also about. I'm a little concerned about the idea of just spending money on a feasibility, which could be $30,000 itself, on the lower portion of a facility that the community has identified as something they would be interested in and something that we think would be possible. Without having sort of an operations component to that. I mean, it's more than just how much will it cost to outfit it for one group's particular needs, or if we do a larger survey of other audiences, but understanding who can pay what does that mean to the parks budget, what are their goals for that space. We don't control that space in any way, and so I just want to add that into it, because I don't think it's as simple as saying we need to do a feasibility study and then we'll decide how we're going to do that space. I would actually think about broadening it and not getting, in terms of what we're trying to approve today, having a line item that acknowledges that we need affordable space for arts uses in Glendale. We've identified one, maybe there's other opportunities out there, whether they're private or city-owned, and just in our budget that we're proposing to council, so that we have the flexibility over the next 2 years to be able to go back and say, we want to pull from this line item to do a feasibility study because some new opportunity came up, or we want to do capital improvements because we've done enough research to figure out, and we can figure out that program, again, the program details of how we want to handle that, but to make sure that we acknowledge something in this as we've done, but broadening again, where it's maybe not capital improvements in a city facility, but more feasibility and or capital improvements to provide affordable space for arts uses in Glendale.
If the commission wants a feasibility study and if you want it approved and want to be able to work on it, then I would recommend that we broaden this line item and say feasibility for potential capital improvements or capital improvements, and really focus on the feasibility, so we actually have a designated amount of money for doing that feasibility study. If you remove it, then we're approving a work plan without funding for a feasibility study, and so then you're going to have to go back and recommend to the council. So we can include a feasibility study for an art facility, whether it's public or private, and then we can designate the 40,000 that's been identified, and the next month we can discuss, how many spaces you want to look at. Is it just one space? And really define that scope, because as Chair Deaver said, we really have to look at, a feasibility study will take into consideration just the hard costs, but as well as the soft costs, and they'll do a cost-benefit analysis and really tell us what that cost is and what the benefits will be to the community, whether it's lower rental fees or whatever it may be. So that would be my recommendation, is leave a line item that says feasibility study, and then we can actually do that feasibility study as few of you mentioned that you want to do.
And it would be, just a clarification, it would be fair to say that if, say, things went really well with the feasibility study and we identified a place and within the next 6 months or 8 months or 5 months, whatever, and so this is what we want to do, we don't have any capital, that if we had a proposal that came all together, we could theoretically go back to council and make a recommendation that, although it's not a part of our work plan, we would like to have an allocation from the Urban Art Fund for this long-term public structure, which is for what the funds were intended.
Yes, you could do that.
I agree with you.
Just to clarify, that means we're going to budget to spend money to do a feasibility study. Do we really need an intense feasibility study? For example, just check with the facilities manager or director for the Civic and give them basic criteria and then have them do the research. Because I don't like spending money on something that could be handled internally before, because if anything, he'll just get a few bids. Most bids are free. The only time would be for his time. Now, unless we're going to pay for his time to do the study. I'm not.
I think getting a consultant to do the feasibility would be in the Commission's best interest, because the person or the staff person at the Civic can give us only one component of what information you need to be able to make the decision if you want to make those capital improvements, if you want to make that investment. They would only be able to give us what their rental fees are, how much money they make every year, and the staffing costs. There's also the other component of actually doing the work, what's really going to enhance that space and allow for different art organizations or artists to use that space. And then there's also looking, is there a demand for it? How much money are we going to need to generate through rental fees to be able to cover those costs and for people to be able to use it? So there are a lot of bits and components, and there are consultants that could do that work and give it that really big picture look and give us a report and say, this facility A is not going to work, but facility B may work. And a consultant can actually look at multiple locations and give us one final report. So I would suggest we could have the consultant look at multiple locations and just let us know what each facility, what the pluses and minuses are for each one.
Did you stop? I saw your hand up first. I was just going here. Okay. Sorry.
You can go.
Commissioner Del
Okay, that's fine. Well, based on the discussion, which was very informative, that personally we had in your office, I had with you, the fact is that besides the feasibility and affordability and all that stuff, then comes the issue of the maintenance. Is that part of the discussion, that how much it's going to cost to maintain a place for long term, and the affordability of the location for the artists to be able to use? Because if we want the approval of the City Council, we need to make sure that this is also doable and worthwhile with the budgets that is consumed. Because appearance-wise, it's just, to me, it was just the lighting and the hanging things and etc. But based on what we talked about, it's much more important. And then the issue is that if it's not civic auditorium, how much would it cost if it's elsewhere? So I hope those studies kind of with the consultant would clarify things that we were not even thinking, or the artist might have not thought about it, which is very important to clarify, because we don't want to make promises and the community would think we are promising things and things don't happen. It just, there is a reason for whatever comes next. So I want that part to be very clear for our audience.
Again, when we issue an RFP for a consultant to do a feasibility study, we can identify the information we want. There are sometimes, we want all the information. I mean, sometimes we go out there, we want every single last bit of information. They sometimes can't give us every single detail, but they can give us enough information to be able to do some extra research, some extra steps ourselves. So we can define exactly what information we need to be able to give you the most comprehensive report so you can make that decision.
Commissioner Cavagna.
Okay, I kind of want to explain why I had this idea, this brilliant stroke of genius hit me when I wanted to remove that line item. The reason was simply because I thought we had already identified the civic specifically. If now all of a sudden we're broadening it so that we can look up other, this is going to take up so much. Have we identified any other locations in-house?
No, but
Okay.
that's something a consultant can do for you.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but now we basically went from it being in the scope of work within the 2 years to use that budget properly, and now it's becoming something that we have to hire a consultant, and then we have to go back and forth, because the consultant is going to take at least 6 months to a year to do this properly. Depending on the scope of work that we ask, I mean, an inspection of a building that was built in the 1920s, 30s, like the Civic is, can take him a long time. I don't even know if there's a crawl space in between the 2 floors, so I don't know how. There's a lot of. We're remodeling our house, so I'm well versed in these kinds of things, crawl space, attic space, and things. So, and actually, I went and visited the site about 2 weeks ago. I was at the downstairs of the Civic, and when you look at some of those walls, I mean, you look at them and you're going, okay, it's not like there's areas in the wall where it's sunken in, and you have like pillars, and it's not the most perfect space. So to assume that we're just going to put track lighting and hangy thingies and make this into an art gallery, I think is not. I mean, I wouldn't feel comfortable putting in $40,000. I think it'd be much more expensive, because, and again, it's an old building. That's simply just what it is. And there's a lot of different options I think there's a lot of possibility with the location, but. That's the reason why, because I had assumed that we were all talking about the lower level of the Civic. So if you guys want to broaden it, fine with me. But I mean, let's get down to what the scope is. I mean, that has to be done extremely quickly, because if we want to make this 2-year thing by the 2-year mark, I mean, we have to step it up. I mean, it has to be very quick.
2 points. You can make the line item a feasibility study, for capital improvements for an art facility, so that this is approved today. Just to point out, most feasibility study, or a good feasibility study, will offer you multiple choices. So one would be you get the Cadillac plan, or you do that, and then there's some mid-range one if you don't do the project at all, but they'll also compare to other facilities, so you're really understanding it. So really good feasibility study will do that, just to give you a better idea of the cost. So so that things can proceed, I would say make the line item a little bit more vague, and in the next month we can really decide. I could bring forward some options for you to consider how you want to move this. If this is something that you really want to do, I think it's going to require a lot more detail. I mean, it will, if you're making an investment in capital improvements, it's going to require a business plan and a lot of those details, and some of that a feasibility study can fund, and then the commission can decide whether or not you want to make a recommendation to the council to proceed.
And if I may just add this to this, and I'm just kind of drawing a little bit on my own background and kind of national experience with cities that are doing this kind of thing. I think it is important to do the feasibility work and to think a little bit bigger, because we want something that is going to be permanent, it's going to be affordable for groups that have come before us and others. And you can, and as Ms. Vartanian said, we can figure out what needs to be in that scope of work. It's certainly something that should be able to be done within a 4 to 6 month period. And it's going to give you a lot more leverage if you're going forward for funding on the private sector philanthropically, if you're going to the city for more funding, if you're looking for community support, because they can go out into the community and actually interview arts organizations, find out what do they need it for, how much can they afford to pay, what's their schedule going to look like, what kinds of needs do they have, how does that match up with the civic facility or with other facilities, or are there building owners or developers or others that have spaces that maybe want to partner and provide that the city could partner with. And so as much as I know we all want to have something immediately available, but people have been asking about this for so long, I think that we need to be thoughtful so that we're doing something that's long-term and truly serves everybody in a way that makes some sense.
Of course, we can prioritize to have kind of civic auditorium to be our main goal, but
Sure.
Absolutely, we need to see what could be a plan A, B, C, because if we are hiring people to do that, it would be cost efficient to do everything at once, so we could make a better decision.
Commissioner Cavagna?
Do we know an approximate cost figure for a feasibility report that is all-encompassing as it should be and is perfect in all of its responses and all that kind of stuff? Do we know an approximate cost?
I mean, we can get a good feasibility study at about $40,000.
Okay, that is all-encompassing throughout the city.
All-encompassing, again, I don't think you're going to get from A to Z. Again, you're going to be able to get
right.
enough information to be able to lead you in the direction to get some more information, if that makes sense. I mean, no feasibility is going to be able to cover every single detail, but we can get the important information you need to begin investigating some other details.
Right. Well, I mean, again, I had completely assumed that this money was simply for the civic auditorium, but I guess that was simply an assumption on my part. I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of at a loss of words, because I would have loved to see a feasibility report simply for the civic, because that's always been the topic of conversation. Now all of a sudden, it's becoming broader, and I'm missing the.
This makes it easier. If you want to do a feasibility for the civic, it is not going to be that much more to do a feasibility for other buildings, because you're still going to have to go through the same process. You still need to have somebody come out and look at the space, somebody talk to the arts organization, somebody give you a proposal of what this could look like. So adding a couple other that the city identifies in terms of other potential things that they've seen, or meeting with a couple of other building owners, isn't going to add really that much more time to it. Now, getting into whether that $40,000 would go into subcontractors that are going to be getting in there and looking at how strong are these walls, how much weight can they support. That's where Ms. Vartanian is correct. That if you're looking a little bit more broadly, there might be subcontracting that way. An engineer could come in and do some of that for some of the priority site, being say the Civic Center. You can ask for that as part of that contract, but there might be a little bit more work when we say this is the one we want for all of these reasons. Now we need to have an engineer go in there because this is how we're going to plan it out.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I really appreciate that. What I would like to do then is change the wording of that line item to being feasibility report for capital improvements to city facilities for arts.
Feasibility study.
Study report. Okay, study.
And do you want it to just be limited to city facilities, or do you want to leave it open to just a facility, just in case if there is a partner? I
would like to know what if every single building in Glendale is. No, I'm kidding. I mean,
broader. In my opinion, broader is better, because
broader is better. But we have to put some kind of limit to this. I mean,
why?
I mean, I don't want this guy to be going into the gas station and checking if we can store art in the garage. I mean, I'm being facetious in saying that, but I mean, and I'm joking, but
it could be
at some point we have to put some kind of perimeter so that we have a scope, because if we start identifying now private organizations, now we're getting into the city facilities for art issue. So capital improvements, that implies that it's a city building, it's a city-owned entity.
May I suggest, if you leave it open so it doesn't specify whether it's city or private, again, this is part of your contract or your RFP for a contractor. You can define, we don't want you looking at more than 10, or here are the 5 we think you should look at. You can look elsewhere. But I would presume that somebody would say a civic auditorium or a civically held building is going to, by default, be slightly more feasible unless somebody else is bringing a bunch of money because there's a property owner that wants to. So it's just going to depend. There are certain things that make it more feasible to have a city property. But I think that's the kind of detail. I just don't want us to get bogged down in the details of things that can really be figured out as part of the process. What we want to find out, are we interested in doing a feasibility study to find the best space possible for a project of this nature? And then we can get into those details later.
But what is the project of this nature? This line item does not give us a specific reason for improving that site. Maybe we were improving it so that it can house sculptures, or maybe we are improving it so that I don't know. Maybe we're putting a brand new piano so that I can go and practice in there. I mean, it doesn't clearly define what it is that we're going to do with that space. And again, all of the assumptions that we're making right now in terms of housing art is simply because we had talked about the lower part of the civic auditorium. That is the only reason why we're making all these assumptions. I mean, and that's kind of my frustration with leaving it as broad as it is. I have no problem with leaving it broad. I mean, I would love to know if, I mean, again, I'd be joking if I said it. You already know what I'm going to say. But I would love to know every single possible site in Glendale that could possibly be improved by us giving them money so that they could fix it and blah, blah, blah. But there's more. I do kind of want to limit it to just city spaces. Because if we start going into private entities, I think that's a little bit beyond our scope at that point. Then we're starting to help out private organizations with city capital improvement funds, and I think that's kind of crossing the lines there. If maybe after 2 years, if this project goes successfully, then maybe we can think about doing that. I have no problem with that. But I think right now we should focus on the city-owned properties, and I think that, in my mind, civic is number one. So,
I would like to say that on this specific thing, I agree with Commissioner Kavanian. Yes, we need to see what are the plans A, B, C, but initially it has to be civic auditorium and it should be city property. For civic pride, I do see, and for the honor of our city, for making our city to look much better, I think we need to start with a city-owned space. And then, as Commissioner Kavanian said, in the future, if this works very well, then we could go with private organizations who would like to donate their large areas that they have for the art purposes to the artists in the community.
I completely understand the civic is, lower level of the civic is a priority site. My recommendation would be to keep this line item general because it gives you flexibility just in case if you need it. A lot can happen between today and next month, and what if there's an opportunity to look at a private facility to be able to get a grant that, triples the investment you're able to make. You want to have that flexibility to look at it. Again, this is not opening it up for every single property. In the coming months, I will bring a scope of work to you and we can identify what plan A, B, and C, or what your preferred venues are for looking, and we can say a city facility is the most important. And again, a good feasibility study will give you, an option for partnering with a private entity so you understand what those financials look like, if it's a city-owned property, privately owned, or if it's a nonprofit. So at this point, let's keep it flexible, but I've heard it loud and clear that what your priority location is, and in the next month, we can really define what that scope is that you want. And I know this is really important, so I will work on my end to be able to bring something forward for you to look at in August or September so that once the council approves this work plan, we can issue an RFP for a consultant.
Okay, I'm fine. I don't want to belabor this item, and I don't want to make it into a bigger deal than it is. If you guys want to make it more flexible, fine, let's make it more flexible.
It's most likely we're going to end up with that route unless it's not like a
non-feasible. We don't know that. That's the thing.
Well, we're already spearheading toward it. So,
okay,
but at least it gives us the flexibility. Maybe the consultant will come up with a better site that we overlooked.
Commissioner Shirikian.
First of all, this is my first time I'm going to express myself in a meeting like this, but will it help if we put a minimum budget and a maximum? For example, if we put a minimum of $5,000, that will cover the study of feasibility study, and if it works fine, then the program will go up to $40,000. Will something like that be more reasonable? I'm just saying. I mean, most of those approved budget, I see it as a recommended budget. But if we have, in this specific case, if we have a minimum $5,000 up to $40,000, that might solve a lot of issues, because then we would invest certain amount for the study or the things that we need. If it works, then we'll go on with the program. If it doesn't, then we'll stop there. Is it something we can work with? I don't know.
Well, could I?
Yes.
The thing is that we definitely need to have something.
Yes,
That is
exactly,
for
exactly.
sure. And we definitely want for civic pride initially to start with the investments that we have with our city. And we need to start with civic auditorium, then maybe other locations. And yes, it is always good, more is better, like that commercial on TV, which is fascinating all the time, with kids in it. But the fact is that, yes, if we have a study, it would not hurt. But for us to know what is possible, it won't hurt. Then it would be easier for us to see if we should stick to the civic pride and our civic auditorium, or should we go with the other locations, because it's much doable, because we do want to serve our community and our artists and the purpose of art. So,
I understand. For just a feasibility study will cost about $40,000, so the minimum maximum may not work for this situation. Also, we need to find out if the feasibility study even says we can make those capital improvements or that investment in that fund. What I would recommend is, again, we'll get into specifics in the next month. If you are happy with the overall work plan, please make a recommendation to approve it, so that then it can be presented to the City Council, because until the City Council approves this, we can't begin implementation.
So we need a motion on approval of the plan, and then we'll move on to the programmatic component in terms of giving you direction for GATE. Is that correct? So do I have a motion?
I will move the motion, barring the change that we had made to the feasibility study of capital improvements on city facilities, all city facilities. What is the exact wording that I should use?
We could say feasibility
I don't know
study
what to call it
for
anymore.
capital improvements to facilities for art.
Sounds good.
excellent.
Sold.
And I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Yes.
Commissioners Hovhanessian,
Yes.
Kavanian,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Sharikian,
Sustain.
Chairperson Deaver.
Yes.
I didn't want to.
You can
I know, but
vote.
Yeah.
I
Today
understand.
he wants to feel kind of.
Yeah.
Ease yourself.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
just want to feel comfortable more.
Absolutely. Thank you. So our next, then the next direction that this is not a formal motion. This is just the direction with regard to GATE.
Correct.
Commissioner, comments?
For the storefront?
I'm ready to go. So
You're ready to go?
yes.
And well, if we're not doing a formal motion, then you.
Yeah, what I need is
us
just
what you
direction from the commission as a whole, if you would like to refine the scope of work and continue the contract with Praxis, or issue a new RFP. Depending on what decision you make, then in the next month or so, I will bring back that refined scope of work or the request for proposal, so then that would be the formal action. I just need to know how you want to proceed at this point. I will prepare those two documents, but again, once this work plan is presented to the council, they make the final decision, and this would be one of the things that they would review and approve and make a final determination.
So who would like to throw out where they're coming from on this?
Actually, I'm going to wait. I'm interested to hear what my colleagues are going to say.
Well, in my situation, I think we want to call them back, having in mind that they are familiar with our system and they know, they have studied, they have done already the legwork for the issue. But if they come back, that's a major big if, is that our community organizations would be very much involved with what is being decided and what is going to happen with it. It should not be only from us or the city employees. It should be community artists and art organizations, which would also be a major component of the decisions made if Praxis is back. If not, then if we are going to have other curators or other organizations who are going to curate that for us, then we need to study and see how efficient they are.
I just have a question. If we, for those of us who might, okay, I'm interested in retaining Praxis or entertaining if for the new budget item, but there are certain, as Commissioner Devonasian, was saying, that there might be certain stipulations within that refinement of what that would be. Is that something we need to discuss now to let you know kind of what we're thinking, and you'll come back, discuss with them, or we do that later?
I don't need specifics, but if, for example, if you want to continue as Commissioner Hovhanessian said, if you continue the contract, if you want to make a stipulation that 50% of artists are local artists, or one Glendale artist needs to be on their curation team, those are things we can decide later, but I want you to know you have that flexibility to put that into the scope of work. So if you want, 50% again, artists to be Glendale artists, you can put that in the scope of work. If you want, a commissioner or a community member to be part of the curatorial team, you can put that in the scope of work. So you have flexibility. I don't need those specifics right now. I just want you to know you have that option, even if you continue with Praxis.
Thank you.
I know that you don't want this right now, but one thing definitely should be there. As far as before, just the decision-making part of it, I want community artists or art organizations to be involved and a commissioner to be involved, and then later on 50% or whatever percentage is okay. It's not that important what percentage of the artists are going to present their work. It's just I want it to be a community involvement in that project.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Lee?
It's fine.
Putting you on the spot. What's your preference?
My preference right now would be to use Praxis, and the reason for it is we've already. I want to cut down the time. We want to get this going. It's already been there, so my afterthought to it would be, we go with it for now, and then next year or the year after, when the time comes to renew, then we look at it and see. Then we'll have time. We'll have the time to look at it and evaluate and says, hey, did this work? Did it work to our liking? And then can we maybe not use a consultant the next time and have it done in-house? If not, put up RFP and have other nonprofits run it. We can look toward those. But to have something that's already plug and play, it would help us a lot to get it going right away.
And I'm going to give my full 2 cents. I would like to continue with Praxis, and we'll talk about specifics at a later date, including a one-year review as well, and we'll talk about the stipulations. But I also want to just give a quick thought as well. I think the branding is important. I think that continuity as we're trying to identify Glendale as an arts-friendly community and programs out there, but I'm also looking at our other programs that are available for rotating public art programs and see that as an opportunity to be able to expand on some of the ideas that people have had about the art and vacant storefronts, and looking at the Art and Vacant Storefronts Gate project as exactly that. It's something to help where we have vacant storefronts, and whether it's in downtown or elsewhere, and while I still want it to be vibrant and interesting, I think there's some opportunities for other RFP proposals and cool stuff to happen under other programs. Thank you. Anya?
Being called up on my last name, I feel like I'm in high school again. First, how long would a new RFP process take?
Minimum, it would be, the RFP process, if you want to issue an RFP, we can define the RFP, the scope of work. We wouldn't be able to issue it until the City Council approves the work plan. So first, we would be able to do it is mid-September, depending on when that council meeting is. Generally, RFPs are open for 1 to 2 months. And then after that is about a 1-month review and selection process, and then it would come back to the commission for your review and approval for that contract. It wouldn't have to go to council for a second time. You would make that final vote, and then from there, the consultant would have to then work with the city to get the insurance and contracting. So that's why I said the 6 to 9 months.
Okay, 6 to 9 months.
Is for them to really to be up and running is really conservative estimate.
And do you know if Praxis, if we were to open it up to an RFP process, do you think they would apply?
I have not asked them.
Okay. I'd be curious about that. Because I'm very much torn, which is why I wanted to hear what everybody else had to say, hoping that it would would sway me one way or another. And it's actually, they're going to have to make a lot of adjustments. I mean, we have to realize that we're cutting their budget by a lot. $50,000 cut in a budget is not, something that you could just laugh about. So, because it's now going on an annual basis from $80,000 to $30,000.
They did spend $60,000, I believe, rather than
was it
$80,000.
60?
Just so you know,
Okay.
they came in under
Okay.
budget, just for clarity.
Okay. In either case, that's still half their budget. So, and there were some things that I was very unhappy about, not actually due to their presentation so much as there were some simple, it's not etiquette things, but there were some things that were not done right, and it kind of bothers me. Seem like nice people, seem like they know what they're doing in their own art world, but there was some really, I don't want to call them rookie mistakes because they're certainly not rookies, but there were some things that were done poorly, and which is why I'm constantly torn, and I keep repeating myself, because I simply don't know what the exact right thing to do is. Because, again, the idea of gate is nice and dandy, but at the same time, what if through RFP process we get something even better? We don't know that. Yeah, at this point, I still haven't made up my mind clearly one way or another. So I can see the pros and cons on both sides, and one doesn't really outweigh the other.
Could I help you on that, Commissioner Kirvanian?
I accept. I would like a brand new car. If you could help me with that, that'd be great.
That is Adam Sandler who does that, gives a Maserati after every movie that he makes. We can't afford that here. I do believe that there were some shortcomings, naturally, or it could be the anxiety or just being behind the podium or etc. But the fact is that they are very familiar with a lot of issues. We have time constraint and the possibility of the money amount that has become less to get a curator with that amount. So having in mind all those different items and the major fact that that time they learned, they did the groundwork, maybe the work, whatever produced was not to what we would have really liked. This time they were without our community artists and organizations. This time they'll be with the community artists and organizations plus a commissioner who would be involved. So that way we would get half of the blame if need be, and the community artists would get it. So it would be a kind of a joint venture with their knowledge of how to do the insurances and etc., and getting in touch with all the property owners, and then the know-hows of our art organizations. Maybe this time it would be a shortcut for 1 year, and then if it works very well, we'll continue. If not, then we'll have other RFPs for other artists. I think it is time and cost efficient if we do, having in mind that we do the damage control by involving our community organizations. Would that help?
So I'm expecting a Mercedes. No, I'm kidding. Actually, I had told Ms. Vartanian about this, that I was torn about this issue, and I think I'm going to side with Praxis on this particular occasion, simply because I don't think we're necessarily under a time constraint. I don't think that because we have plenty on our agenda. And gate is not even worried about gate, but I'm going to side with Praxis on this particular occasion, simply because they've done all the legwork already, and I don't want to have to go through a maybe 6 to 9 month process, and then our 2-year budget will run out, won't it? We have to reapprove that
Yeah, and
by the time things get into place.
And next month, in the coming months, everything is next month, so I think we're going to be really busy in August. But what we could do is really define that. I've been hearing a 1-year extension, so that's something else we can talk about. We just give the $60,000 for that 1 year for them to have that program, to give an opportunity to spend the $60,000, and if they want to be able to get that grant funding, or if you want to split it up over 2 years and do 30-30, I mean, that's not going to be a lot of work. So we can have that discussion next month. So the direction that I'm hearing from 4 of you is that to continue with praxis, but to refine the scope of work. Commissioner Sharikian, if you have an opinion, I'd love to hear it. If you want to join with the rest of the commission, that's fine. And then next month or 2, I will bring forward some more information for you to discuss.
I'm fine with it right now.
Okay.
Discuss with the commission.
By the way, if you ever need to say, you can talk to my attorney. He's sitting right there.
So you have the direction that you need.
Yes, I
for
do.
this.
Thank you.
And we did the, all right, so next item, please.
Item 6, commission staff comments.
And I'm going to do the unusual and actually open on staff comments, because I do want to extend the welcome to our new Commissioner Shirikian, who is cautiously getting into the waters here, which I think is probably a smart thing to do. But welcome. I want to extend that. We're very excited to have you here.
This is honestly a great opportunity for me to give back to my community. I've been around Glendale for over 30 years, and I've talked to Terry a few days ago, and I've told that I remember Brand Boulevard with only one high-rise, and therefore I've seen this community change a lot culturally, with art and community, of course. Therefore, I would like to bring it back, my whole experience, now to City Hall and the Art and Culture Commission. Thank you.
Well, we are very glad to have you with us.
Thank you.
Could you give us a little bit background about the art or your business or your passion for the art or whatever in that line?
Where do I start?
We're all taking notes.
Within 2 minutes limit, I will say this. Arts has been my passion in the last at least 20 years, I should say. I organized, involved in many different cultural and art form, from performing to literature to painting, performance art, theater, you name it. And my background from Armenian culture, of course, I think it will bring in big assets, not only to this commission, also to the city of Glendale, I think. And I'll try to be more helpful to everyone, as I see that we want to resolve things, not complicate things. Therefore, that's my point of view and then my background. Thank you.
So you organize different art events, help to organize, fundraise. We try to catch you in your strength, so we would.
No.
We have artists here who need to be introduced.
I've been an artist. I've painted for many, many years, so my background is painting. But at the same time, for the last 15 years or 20 years, I've been in the organization part of it, the management part of it. So therefore, my point of views will bring a lot of probably help to this commission.
That's
Hopefully.
very inspiring.
Hopefully, yes.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other commissioner comments? Commissioner Lee?
Welcome.
Thank you.
Cruise night. Make sure you come out this Saturday. Brand Boulevard, my favorite event. So make sure you come.
Okay. I have an announcement. It's an announcement for artists and art galleries and anyone in the world of art. There is a major occasion and opportunity coming up, which is the International Art Business Symposium 2013. And it is going to be in Grand Rapids, Michigan, September 15 to 17. Why do I announce it? Because it's major. This symposium is a rare opportunity to network and to connect on one-on-one situation with decision makers, with art industry moguls, with galleries, publishing and licensing experts, to review the portfolios of the artists. And this event happens at the eve of the next day. It's going to be the Artprize, which is one of the major international, world-known, top 5 art festivals in the world. So artists and people who are very involved, they take this trip, they go there for 2 days, they spend the time, they get the advisement and they get the know-how and connection with the major people who are in the art business. So this is not for new artists maybe, but this is for artists who have done for years and they want an arena to be connecting to the whole world, to get to know all the other major artists in the world who are going to be there and they are going to participate in that event. So to be able to participate and to get more information on the details, they have an LA rep, which I'll give the telephone number, and you could contact. It is 818-219-6939. I repeat, the number is 818-219-6939. And you'll get the flyers and the brochures and the details of when and how and etc. I would really recommend all the galleries and artists and people who want to sell their art or they want to be introduced to the world to go to that event. Thank you.
I just want one more mention, and we'll go to staff. Also, McCritchie Art Gallery has an opening tomorrow at 7 o'clock, and the exhibit runs through August 16th. And Ms. Ratana.
I want to just extend an invitation to the Commission, and I will follow up my announcement with an email. The Korean American Forum of California will have the unveiling ceremony and reception of the Peace Monument in memory of victims of Japanese military sexual slavery. The event will take place on July 30th at 11 a.m. at the auditorium of the Glendale Central Library. This is the monument that that was presented last month, so they would like to extend an invitation to the Commission. As mentioned, I will send you an email just to remind you.
And I would also like to extend a warm welcome to Councilman Shirikian and all of you who were reappointed in the last month. We're very happy that we'll be working with all of you over the next several years, I'm sure. And I'd also like to, Chuck Weick mentioned the Central Library renovation, and as you know, as you remember, Carolyn Fleming came and presented a design plan to you a couple months ago, and I'm happy to announce that on Tuesday, the successor agency, formerly known as the Redevelopment Agency, approved the funding for that project. So we will be moving forward with construction. I anticipate, the timeline's not set, but I do anticipate that the construction will start after we finish Brand Library, and we expect to reopen Brand Library sometime in March, if all goes well. Thank you.
Congratulations. And next item.
Item 7, written communications.
Of which we have none. So next item and
Adjournment.
adjourned. We are adjourned.